So this is the future of American manned spaceflight. A view, very high level view with this format from the inside. I'm Max McGee, as I mentioned, and I am not affiliated with any company or organization, so don't sue any of my former employers. Which I think we're going to talk about in one of the next presentations. Anyhow, this is about me. Graduated from Madison East High School in 1999. 2003, graduated from the UW with a BS in Engineering Mechanics and Astronautics. Worked for a NASA contractor, United Space Alliance, for 7 years, and I've recently returned to Madison, and I'm interviewing locally. That's me in the Mission Control Center, by the way. So a little history about American manned spaceflight. All of our spaceflight started with one guy, Wernher von Braun, who used to be a Nazi and an SS officer, but keeps slightly better company now. He was responsible for Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, which was canceled in 1970. There were 3 additional flights that would have flown. In the 70s, however, we did have Skylab, which included 3 manned missions, and the Apollo-Soyuz test project, where we rendezvoused with a Russian space module. And so that was about it for the 70s. The rest of the time was spent planning. What were we planning? There we go, the space shuttle. So as you all know, the space shuttle has been in operation from 1981 to the present. It was originally expected to fly in 1977, had some delays. It was supposed to save Skylab, crashed into Australia, and it was supposed to cost $36 million in 2006 dollars, according to how we sold it to Congress. Remember that number. So anyway, we put all of our eggs in our space shuttle basket. Because of that immense flight rate of 60 shuttles per year, we're nowhere close. It's reusable, it's cheap, it's safe. We can launch commercial, military, we can do space station missions. It'll replace everything else. Again, that's how we sold it to Congress. So here's a question for the audience. As a percentage of the total federal budget, what would you say NASA's budget is? And show of hands, A, 0 to 3%. All right, good number. B, 4 to 9%, good number. 10 to 30%, right? And higher, anybody? Well, since 1975, it's been between 0.57 and 1.05% of the federal budget. At its peak, during the Apollo run-up, it was just about 4.4%. So a lot of times we think that it's a lot more expensive than it is, but you know, we're still talking about billions and billions of dollars. So this is the federal budget. I'm not going to read everything on here, but this little piece down here, that's NASA. So remember the $36 million we advertised? Well, it really costs $60 million per flight. And if you average the entire cost of the program out per flight, it's $1.3 billion. So is NASA worth it? I mean, I just told you how expensive it was, how we undersold it. We don't really produce anything. We don't really gain anything. It's not like Columbus, who was out in search of gold, in search of land. But we do have some spin-offs. A bed that you can put your handprint in. The thing is, we get about a 20 times return on investment for every dollar that NASA puts out into industry. And so these are some of the numbers that NASA's actually funded projects. If you'll notice, Texas is $3.8 billion. That's why I worked there. Wisconsin actually got $22 million, and let's see, $1.3 million to Montana. So in the 2000s, bringing us back up to the present, in 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia disintegrated on re-entry. I think everyone knows about that. It was a tragedy, you know, impacted everyone. But that led to the decision to terminate the Space Shuttle in 2010. So we had a replacement. It was canceled. It was originally supposed to be one thing. We had a new administrator come in, and once Obama got in, he cleaned house. It was over budget, it was behind schedule, and it was lacking in innovation, and I gotta say I agree with him. But what's next? So what Obama has planned is a commercial spaceflight venture. So what we do, instead of having NASA develop these extremely expensive rockets, because we have a lot of overhead, truly, they've contracted with private suppliers like SpaceX and rocket plane Kistler to produce their own rockets. And this is the guy who invented Tesla Motors. He also owned and built PayPal and then sold it for billions of dollars. All right, so the current 2011 budget includes no Constellation program funding. Remember the big red canceled? That was that. NASA FY11 budget is actually an increase. So NASA has actually increased its funding, just not for space manned space missions. So a little more information about some of the competitors for the commercial ventures. This is Orbital Science's logo. This is their proposed rocket. They have actually been awarded a contract to resupply the International Space Station for 8 missions. That's a $1.9 billion contract award. Their rocket is called the Taurus 2. And this is just payload. This isn't manned spaceflight. We're talking about just cargo and resupply. So SpaceX is really the leader in commercial spaceflight. They've been awarded a contract for 12 resupply missions, but theirs will actually cost less, $1.6 billion. And so it's funny that they're first place, but it's because they are cheaper that they're first place and leading the way. So we still have no crew. There are 0 entries in the commercial crew development contract. But in the next 2 to 3 years, the Dragon capsule by SpaceX should be capable of being tested and proven manned flight rated. Orbital Sciences said that they're 10 to 15 years away from manned space flight. And this is another company you've probably heard of. This is Burt Rutan's Scaled Composites Virgin Galactic. It's called White Knight 1, White Knight 2, Spaceship 1. Not related to NASA really at all, but they won the X Prize. So they got $10 million back on the $25 million investment. A good trade, right? So in conclusion, our future is in commercial spaceflight. NASA is not going to be building the rocket that will take the next men and women to the International Space Station or beyond. I showed you the space tourism that was available through Virgin Galactic now, but really there's no concrete answers. Obama's proposals are very vague, and I'm done.